So a few years ago, your department rolled out a new Treasury transparency portal website that allows taxpayers and legislators to access up-to-date information on the state's general fund. I have to commend you on it. A lot of the work that I've done here in the General Assembly probably wouldn't have been possible without it. So you've expanded that website since you launched it. And one of the things I find absolutely fascinating is watching our state cash flows in real time. That might say something about me. In fact, what I've noticed is that since October, the end of October of last year, our state has had a STIP line of credit to prop up our cash flows. So for those folks at home who don't know what that is, that's the Treasury's short-term investment pool. Without that STIP line of credit, our cash flow was negative $1.4 billion with a B on January 15th of this year. So from your experience in looking at other states, are these cash flow fluctuations common practice? And how does your department explain the cash flow fluctuations throughout the year, incorporating those tax receipts coming into the general fund?
Sorry, what was the last, incorporating?
When you incorporate the flow of tax receipts into the general fund. I know certain taxes come in at a certain time of year and certain expenditures go out, but you know, based on other states, is this common practice?
Thank you, Senator. So first of all, good to see you, and I've enjoyed also our work together. Thank you for your work in your previous elected role on transparency in here. Thank you for your work on cybersecurity, which our department has watched and applauded. To talk briefly about the cash flow issue in particular, yes, as of today, the general fund balance, I think, is $177 million, and there is a $700 million STIP, short-term, basically a short-term line of credit from Treasury funds to the general fund. Whether the level of concern we should all have over this varies according to a couple of things. It is normal in most states for there to be some form of short-term borrowing, depending on how revenues come in and expenses go out, that is sort of seasonal. So if you, for example, if the legislature were to decide you're going to issue annual paychecks, there'd be time of the year where you'd have to have some short-term borrowing until your income came in. Historically, it's been the case that the Commonwealth and most states, at least many states, borrow to meet seasonal fluctuations. In the past, that was done with typically what was called a TAN, a tax anticipation note. And that would normally happen from somewhere as the days get darker, and would be relieved in the spring when all the tax revenue comes in. What's concerning is when that happens earlier, and the second level of concern is to what degree is it happening. So prior to this fiscal year, we had seen what I thought was the crest of the short-term borrowing a couple of years ago, when the amount of the STIP was, I believe, on the order of 2.5 or $2.8 billion. We seem to be headed to where that was, getting less and less, and then this year there's been an uptick. What I'm seeing this year so far looks, again, I want to say, seasonal. What would worry me is if we end the year, indeed, at a level in the general fund that is $900 million less than where we started. That suggests something more worrisome is going on. And then what that means for the following year is that instead of a line of credit that begins maybe in October 31st or November, as this year's did, that it would need to begin in the summer. And that would be cause for, that would suggest to me, some alarm bells going off about liquidity. The other thing that I should say is we've been glad to be able to play a role in helping the Commonwealth manage its liquidity needs. It's saved us money, it's saved taxpayers money, categorically. And even in the way we do it year to year, we've gotten better at it. A few years ago, it cost the Commonwealth $8 million. We've now structured it so it changes day to day, and the interest cost so far this year is, I think, on the order of about $3.2 million. So that is far less than it would cost the Commonwealth to go out and do a TAN or a private borrowing. But there are inherent constraints. My first obligation is to be a fiduciary to the funds. And no fiduciary would tell you you can lend out, I don't know, 60% of your investments to one entity. So my concern is, if I'm reading some lines in the budget correctly, next year we may be looking at a much bigger step. I have concerns about our institutional ability to provide that kind of level, and I would have real concerns about timing if it were to change.
Well, and certainly I think I share your concerns, and it's something that we're going to have to monitor and watch. But as Senator Scavello said, not overspending our budgets and planning for that rainy day, having those funds in reserves, has a positive economic impact on our budget and our debt. So thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.